Dear friend, uh, the goal is obtainable. The problem is with the modern political structure of this country, people would rather believe a president who would play with the taxes than actually do something about it. Even a few of them who's running on both sides, the Democrats and Republicans, except for Ron Paul, has offered to, instead of eliminating the IRS, change the IRS to a flat tax or so-called fair tax, which is, to me, we don't need another tax. The so-called fair tax and the so-called flat tax, all it is just renaming the taxes again. It does nothing to reduce them. When I hear people like Neil Boards and stuff back in this so-called fair tax initiative, it doesn't do anything but just change the names. And that's what gets to me. Only Ron Paul is not talking about replacing the income taxes with a fair tax. He's not talking about increasing it. He's not talking about, doing all this stuff. But the true matter is, nobody else is saying anything. Everybody else, the IRS is their little pet project. For years, presidents have used the IRS as a weapon against their adversaries. Tom Crider, for example, proved that the income tax laws are bogus anyway. They were appealed by Congress over 48 years ago. So what's the sense in still paying for all this? And number two, of course the people like Bush and Hillary and all of them will say, we need to bring the tax, down a little bit. They played with a tax that was not supposed to be charged to us anyway. Instead, just like, what was it? The tax on long distance calls back over 100 years ago was not appealed but changed. The politicians, instead of the tax that paid the Spanish-American War, instead now goes to supposedly paying for our new endeavors in Iraq. Only Ron Paul that I've ever heard does not promote changing but elimination. Instead of promoting increasing government spending, decreasing it. Instead of adding to government programs, to eliminate them. And instead of but the only way we're going to do that is to elect people like Ron Paul. Libertarians minded people and people who believe the way our founding fathers did in the way of less government, in a less intrusive government and a responsible government. Not one that's going to police the world, that's not going to raise our taxes to 75% and make up so many and spying on its own citizens just because they can. But that's totally up to people like you and me. If we don't get out there and start voting for people like Ron Paul, for not only the House of Representatives and Congress, this country's pretty much shot. But I'll let you decide. Remember, if you want the abolishing of the IRS to be a fundamental goal, you start with Ron Paul and you move with people like that. You decide.